The twin suns hung low in the sky, casting a harsh, fiery glow over the rocky surface of the asteroid fortress known as Fort Verne. This was no ordinary military base. It spun slowly in the emptiness of space, its metal walls forged to withstand the worst the galaxy could throw at it. The air was thin, the gravity stronger than most planets, and the winds that blew across its jagged cliffs were fierce enough to knock down even the toughest alien recruits. Fort Verne was a place built for one purpose: to turn raw recruits into the most skilled, ruthless soldiers the galaxy had ever seen. Today was the start of a new training cycle. Cadets from across the stars had gathered here, some excited, most terrified. They came from dozens of different worlds, each species unique in strength and skill, but all of them knew the brutal truth. Only a few would survive the 7 days of the training course, and even fewer would finish it. Those who did earned the right to serve in the elite forces of the Zeroth Alliance, protectors of peace and justice across many star systems. Among the crowd of nervous cadets, one figure stood out. He was human. Not just any human, but a Deathworlder, someone from a planet so dangerous and unforgiving that survival there was a daily battle. Earth was a world of wild storms, deadly predators, and unforgiving landscapes. The stories about Earth's harsh environment were whispered across the galaxy, often with disbelief. How could someone from such a brutal place even hope to last in Fort Varne's trials? The human stepped off the shuttle quietly. He was lean, his skin tanned and weathered from years of exposure to Earth's rough climate. His dark hair was tied back and a jagged scar ran across his brow, a silent testament to battles fought long before he arrived here. Unlike the other cadets who wore the latest battle armor or carried advanced weapons, he carried nothing but the clothes on his back and the calm determination in his eyes. Alien drill sergeants, tall and fierce with glowing eyes and armored bodies, looked at the newcomer with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. Sergeant Crawl, a towering figure with reptilian scales and a voice like grinding stones, muttered under his breath, "A Deathworlder? Here? This must be some kind of joke." His fellow instructor Venner, a bulky, tusked warrior with electric blue skin, laughed cruelly. "He won't last till noon." But the human did not seem to hear them. He scanned the sprawling training grounds before him, the jagged cliffs where recruits would climb, the acid rain fields, the toxic swamps, and the endless obstacle courses, designed to test every limit of body and mind. The wind howled like a wild beast, whipping dust and debris into the air. Some cadets stumbled immediately, clutching their helmets and shields. The human simply smiled. "Is this the warm-up?" he said softly. The others stared. No one had spoken that way before. There was no fear, no hesitation, only quiet confidence. The training began with a brutal test, a 20-kilometer run across sharp, rocky terrain under searing acid rain. Alien cadets with multiple lungs struggled to breathe, their muscles cramping and bodies slowing. Many collapsed before they reached halfway. The human, barefoot and bleeding from small cuts on his feet, pressed forward steadily, his face calm and focused. When it came time to climb the gravity spire, a vertical tower that increased gravity to 5 times normal, most cadets fell, crushed by their own weight or sheer exhaustion. A young Threxan cadet screamed in pain as his arm broke under the strain, but the human reached the top, pulling himself up with steady strength. Without hesitation, he helped the injured Threxan up beside him. The other cadets whispered in disbelief. How could one man endure what crushed so many? In the control room high above the base, the drill sergeants watched the monitors with growing shock. Their confident laughter had died away, replaced by nervous glances and hushed warnings. "Sergeant." Crawl's voice trembled. "He's not even tired. This shouldn't be possible." Venner, wiping sweat from his tusks, nodded grimly. "He's not breathing hard. He's not showing any signs of strain. He's different." As night fell, the exhausted cadets were herded into emergency pods designed to give them minimal rest. Most lay silent, barely able to move. But the human stood alone on a cold ridge, staring up at the stars with quiet determination. "I'll finish this," he said to himself, voice steady and clear. Tonight. There was no arrogance in his words, only the unshakable belief of someone who had faced death before many times and had survived. This was more than training. This was a battle for survival, and this human was ready to win. The first day of the course was only the beginning. What came next was known throughout the galaxy as the Brutal Course, a relentless series of challenges designed to test every part of a cadet's body and mind. The instructors warned that even the strongest veterans rarely made it past the third day. It was a trial meant to break spirit, crush hope, and separate the weak from the worthy. But for this human from Earth, it was just another test. From dawn, the cadets faced impossible obstacles. The sun scorched their backs as they began a long run through acid storms. Rain poured down in thick, burning drops that hissed and sizzled when it touched skin or armor. Alien recruits gasped for breath through strange breathing tubes, their multi-lunged bodies struggling to filter the poisonous atmosphere. Many fell to their knees, screaming in pain, their armor corroding before they could finish. The human moved, steadily through the storm. His bare feet pounded against the jagged rocks, and every step left red marks from sharp cuts and bruises. His shirt clung to his back, soaked with sweat and rain, but his face showed no sign of weakness. Where others stumbled, he pushed forward, his eyes focused on the horizon as if nothing could stop him. By midday, the survivors arrived at the next challenge, the Gravity Spire, a towering structure that loomed over the training grounds like a giant. This wasn't just a climb, it was a battle against weight itself. Gravity here was 5 times stronger than on most worlds. Each movement felt like lifting mountains. The alien cadets tried to pull themselves up the spire, but their muscles screamed in agony. One young Threxan cadet lost his grip, falling to the ground with a sickening crack. Pain tore through him, but he managed a weak cry for help. The human didn't hesitate. Despite his own exhaustion, he climbed down to the injured Threxan and helped him to the top. His hands were strong, steady, and careful, but the effort left him gasping for air. Even then, he showed no fear or complaint. The other cadets watched in stunned silence. This was unlike anything they had ever seen, an individual not only surviving but helping others survive in the harshest conditions. The instructors were watching from above, their faces pale with disbelief. Sergeant Krall's usual scowl softened into something like respect. "He's not just surviving," he said quietly. "He's dominating." As the day wore on, the cadets faced a series of challenges designed to break their spirit. They ran through toxic swamps where invisible poisons in the air burned their lungs and stung their eyes. They crossed fields of razor-sharp rocks that tore at their flesh. They fought in the arena, a giant circular pit filled with dangerous creatures bred to kill. In the arena, the human showed something no one expected, not just strength, but quick thinking. While others charged blindly or froze in fear, he used the creature's own instincts against them. He dodged and weaved, luring them into traps or using fallen rocks as weapons. When a massive 4-legged beast charged, he jumped onto its back and drove a sharpened bone into its neck. The beast collapsed, and the crowd of cadets watching cheered in disbelief. The alien cadets had never seen a human fight like this. To them, humans were weak, primitive, survivors only because their worlds were cruel but not worthy of real respect. But here, in the heat and danger of Fort Varn, the human was proving them wrong with every move. At nightfall, the surviving cadets were ordered into small pods where they could rest barely. There was no food, just a few minutes to close their eyes before the next day of torture began. Most of them collapsed instantly, exhausted beyond belief. But the human stood outside the pods, breathing deeply in the cold air. His body was bruised and bleeding, his clothes torn, but his eyes were bright with purpose. When one of the instructors approached, surprised to find him still awake, the human looked up and smiled faintly. "This is nothing," he said simply. "Back home, every day is a fight just to stay alive. This course is just training." The instructor shook his head in disbelief. "You should be resting. You need strength for the days ahead." The human nodded but didn't move to the pod. "I'll finish this. All of it." In that moment, the other cadets who watched from inside the pods felt a shift. Some whispered to each other, unsure if they were inspired or terrified. One alien cadet muttered, "He's not like us. He's from a death world. That's why he can do this." And maybe that was the key. Where others saw danger, he saw challenge. Where others felt pain, he felt alive. The brutal course was meant to break him. Instead, it was awakening something deeper, a relentless will to survive and to conquer. As the wind howled around Fort Varn that night, the human cadet looked toward the next day's trials, ready for whatever hell they planned to throw at him. He was not just here to pass. He was here to finish. The sun rose again over Fort Varn, but this day felt different. The air was thick with tension. The alien instructors who had once laughed at the human cadet now watched him with a growing sense of alarm. Their advanced scanners showed no signs of fatigue or injury slowing him down. Instead, the human moved with a strange mixture of calm and ferocity, an unstoppable force that neither their training methods nor the environment could shake. The next challenge was the battle gauntlet. Oh, cruel test designed to break even the toughest recruits. It was a long corridor filled with traps, ambushes, and combat trials against simulated enemies and fierce creatures bred for war. The walls were lined with sharp blades, electrified panels, and hidden turrets. Every step forward was a gamble. Between survival and death, cadets before had failed here in droves. Many were cut down by the mechanical traps or overwhelmed by the simulated warriors. Panic was common, screams echoing through the tunnel as some lost their minds under pressure. But the human stepped forward alone, his face calm, his breathing steady. As the gauntlet's first traps activated, a series of swinging blades cut through the air like scythes. Without hesitation, the human ducked and rolled with a fluid grace, dodging every deadly swing. His reflexes were sharper than anyone else's, almost instinctive. The blades missed him by inches and his footsteps barely made a sound. Next came the electrified floor panels, randomly sparking with deadly energy. The human scanned the pattern quickly, then leapt from safe spot to safe spot, barely touching the panels. Where others would have panicked and rushed, he moved deliberately, conserving energy and staying focused. Halfway through the gauntlet, the simulated enemies appeared, advanced androids programmed to attack with precision and lethal force. They moved like shadows, their blades flashing in the dim light. The cadets who had faced them before were shredded in moments, but the human fought like a whirlwind. He used every trick he had learned on Earth's battlefields, striking weak points, dodging with uncanny speed, and using the environment to his advantage. When one android lunged, the human grabbed a nearby loose pipe and swung it with all his strength. The metal connected with the android's head, shattering sensors and wires. Another tried to catch him off guard with a sudden thrust, but the human spun out of reach, using the momentum to send the android crashing into the walls. His movements were brutal but precise, a perfect balance of power and control. Each victory gave him a little more confidence, but he never let his guard down. He knew the gauntlet was designed to test more than just strength. It aimed to break the mind. The final stretch of the gauntlet. A deep growl echoed through the corridor. From the shadows emerged a massive bioengineered beast bred for killing. Its jaws dripped with venom, and its eyes glowed red with rage. Most cadets froze in fear. This creature was the final test. If it caught you, there was no chance to survive. The human faced the beast without hesitation. His eyes narrowed as he sized it up. Instead of charging blindly, he circled, watching the creature's movements and searching for an opening. The beast lunged, snapping its jaws inches from his face. He ducked low, then slashed at its exposed flank with a sharp shard of metal. The creature roared, swiping its massive claws, but the human dodged again, using a fallen pipe as a weapon. Blow after blow, he wore down the beast, refusing to back down even as his arms and legs screamed in pain. With a final strike, he pierced the creature's throat. It collapsed in a heap, twitching as the life drained away. The silence after was deafening. From the control room, the drill sergeant stared in disbelief. Sergeant Crawl's eyes burned with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. He's done what no one else could. How is this possible? Venar's jaw tightened. He's breaking the course in ways we never expected. Outside the gauntlet, the surviving cadets looked on in stunned silence. Some whispered words of awe, others of fear. A few tried to brush it off, but no one could deny the truth. The human had passed the most dangerous test without a scratch. As the day faded into night, the cadets were led to the mental endurance chamber, a place where exhaustion met psychological torment. For most, it was a place of nightmares, where their worst fears were amplified and tested against their will. They were sealed inside pods that projected illusions designed to shatter resolve and break minds. The human entered the chamber, with eyes wide open. The pods hissed shut and the darkness closed in. Inside, he faced visions of his past, earthquakes that shook his home, wild beasts that stalked his nights, the faces of friends lost in endless battles. Each memory was painful, but instead of breaking him, it fueled a deeper fire. He fought through the illusions with a steady heart, refusing to let fear control him. His mind stayed clear, and when the pods finally opened, he stepped out, steady and unshaken. The other cadets looked at him like he was something more than human. The instructors, though, were beginning to panic. They had designed the course to weed out all but the strongest. Yet this Deathworlder cadet was not only surviving, he was excelling, surpassing their expectations and forcing them to question everything they knew about strength and endurance. Behind the scenes, whispers spread among the elite commanders. If this human could conquer Fort Varn's brutal course so quickly, what kind of force did Earth truly hold? And what did that mean for the future of the galaxy? As the stars shone brightly above the fortress, the human cadet prepared for the days ahead. He was more than just a survivor now. He was a symbol of something new and powerful, a force that the galaxy had never seen before, and Fort Varn would never be the same again. The days following the battle gauntlet only grew harsher, as the instructors unleashed new trials meant to crush the spirit and test the limits of every cadet's body and mind. They pushed the recruits into the survival maze, a vast, ever-changing labyrinth filled with hostile creatures, deadly traps, and shifting terrain that challenged even the most experienced warriors. The maze was designed to force cadets to rely on their instincts, problem-solving skills, and sheer willpower. For most, it was a nightmare, a place where panic quickly took over and only the strongest survived. The human stepped into the maze with steady determination, his senses sharp and mind focused. The creatures lurking inside were unlike anything most cadets had seen: giant insects with armored shells, venomous reptiles that slithered through the shadows, and carnivorous plants that snapped shut like steel jaws. Other cadets ran blindly, screaming as they were attacked or trapped, but the human moved carefully and calmly, using the environment to his advantage. He learned to read the subtle signs, the broken twigs, faint smells, and rustling leaves that warned of danger ahead. When a giant scorpion-like creature charged, he didn't panic. Instead, he dodged swiftly, using a fallen branch as a spear to strike the beast's vulnerable underbelly. The attack was quick and decisive, ending the fight before the beast could retaliate. As he moved deeper, the maze itself seemed to test him more cruelly. Walls shifted, passages closed, and new dangers appeared where safety once was. Yet the human adapted quickly, using his survival instincts honed on Earth's wildest death worlds. He mapped the changing labyrinth in his mind, finding patterns in the chaos that others couldn't see. His body was tired, muscles aching and bruised, but his spirit remained unbroken. When he came across an injured alien cadet trapped beneath a fallen tree, he paused, not out of mercy, but because he knew the value of allies in such a hostile place. With immense effort, he lifted the heavy branches and pulled the cadet free. That act of unexpected kindness shocked the alien, who had expected only competition and cruelty. Together, they navigated the rest of the maze, forming a reluctant partnership based on survival and respect. News of the human's progress spread quickly through the ranks. The other cadets whispered stories of his strength, endurance, and strange compassion. The instructors grew more anxious. Sergeant Krall muttered to his fellow trainers, "If he finishes this, the entire course will collapse. We'll have to rethink everything we know about Deathworlders." As the final trial in the maze approached, a narrow bridge suspended over a pit filled with venomous serpents, the human and his companion faced their greatest test. The bridge was unstable and swayed dangerously with every step. The human went first, moving with confidence despite the creaking wood and hostile eyes glowing from below. Halfway across, the bridge began to snap, sending planks crashing into the pit. With lightning reflexes, he grabbed a broken beam, swinging it to block the serpent's attacks, then pulled the alien cadet forward. They both made it across, hearts pounding but alive. Emerging from the maze, the human was greeted not with cheers but with stunned silence. The alien commanders exchanged worried looks, realizing this human was more than a soldier. He was a force of nature, a symbol of Earth's brutal worlds and relentless will. The trials of Fort Varn had been designed to test and break all cadets, but the human was rewriting the rules. His triumph wasn't just physical. It was a clear message to the galaxy that Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. That night, as he rested under the alien stars, the human cadet thought about what lay ahead. The final challenges would be the hardest yet, tests of mind, heart, and leadership. But he was ready. He had come to Fort Varn not to survive but to conquer, and nothing in the galaxy would stand in his way. The drill sergeant's panic grew, but so did the legend of the Deathworlder who could finish their brutal course in a day. An impossible feat that would change the future of interstellar war forever. The next day dawned with a heavy silence hanging over Fort Varn, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and unease. The human cadet had already stunned everyone by surviving and dominating every brutal test thrown at him, but the instructors weren't finished yet. They now prepared the most grueling trial of all, the leadership gauntlet, a test designed not just of strength or survival skills, but of strategy, quick thinking, and the ability to lead others under extreme pressure. The surviving cadets were divided into squads and given a mission: navigate a hostile battlefield simulation filled with enemy forces, environmental hazards, and unpredictable surprises. They had to work together, communicate flawlessly, and achieve objectives against impossible odds. Most squads struggled immediately, falling into chaos as the simulated enemies, an aggressive alien species known as the Krethar, attacked relentlessly with plasma weapons and cunning tactics. The terrain was harsh, a broken wasteland of jagged rocks and toxic fog that limited visibility and damaged equipment. Radios frequently failed, and trust between cadets was tested to the breaking point. But the human squad was different. From the start, he took command, not by demanding orders, but by leading through example and calm confidence. His voice was steady and clear, cutting through the confusion like a beacon. When the Krethar ambushed them in a narrow canyon, his squad panicked. Without hesitation, he directed them to set up defensive positions, using the rocks for cover and coordinating suppressing fire. His strategy was simple but effective: keep moving, control the high ground, and never let the enemy surround them. When a squad member was hit, the human was the first to risk his own safety, dragging the injured to cover and applying field medicine learned in the harshest conditions on Earth. The alien cadets watched in disbelief as he never hesitated, never faltered, even as explosions rocked the ground and enemy fire streaked past. His instincts were sharp and his decisions quick but never reckless. He trusted his team and inspired them to fight harder. Gradually, the tide of the battle began to shift. The human squad managed to push back the Krethar forces, securing objective points and gathering vital intelligence about enemy movements. Communication was chaotic, but he managed to keep morale high, cracking jokes in the middle of firefights and encouraging every small victory. Some alien cadets began to see him not as a foreign Deathworlder, but as a leader they could respect and follow. The instructors watching from the control room were baffled. Sergeant Krall's voice was low with frustration. How is he doing this? No one has ever commanded like this. It's unnatural. Venar nodded grimly. He's teaching them how to fight, not just follow orders. That's why the squad listens. As the mission reached its climax, the humans' squad faced their toughest challenge: a massive Krethar war machine, a towering beast of metal and firepower, blocking their path to the final objective. Most squads would have fled or waited for reinforcements, but the human formulated a bold plan. Using the toxic fog to hide their approach, he led a small strike team to flank the war machine while the rest created a distraction. The maneuver was risky. If caught, they would be destroyed instantly, but the human's trust in his team was unshakable. With precision timing, the strike team attacked, targeting weak points revealed during earlier skirmishes. The war machine roared in fury as it took damage, but the human pressed on, using explosives and clever tactics to disable its legs. When it finally collapsed with a thunderous crash, the squad surged forward, capturing the objective and completing the mission. The simulation ended with silence, then a burst of stunned applause from some alien cadets who had never seen such leadership in action. The human cadet stood tall, breathing hard but proud. This was more than just surviving trials. It was about proving humanity's unique strength, the ability to inspire and unite others under fire. That night, the instructors gathered in secret, their fear turning to respect, but also uncertainty. The human wasn't just a strong soldier, he was changing everything they believed about power and leadership. His success was rewriting the rules of war, and the galaxy was about to take notice. Meanwhile, the human looked toward the stars outside, Fort Varn's walls. He knew the toughest battles were yet to come. But for now, he had shown the galaxy that Deathworlders weren't just fighters, they were born leaders, and no force could stop a human united with a purpose. The legend of the Deathworlder Cadet was no longer a rumor. It was a promise of something unstoppable. The air on Fort Varn grew tense after the leadership gauntlet, the instructors whispering in tight groups, uneasy about the human cadet who had shattered every expectation. The next challenge was meant to test mental strength. The Psi Resistance trial, designed to break the mind with illusions, psychic attacks, and emotional warfare. The alien commanders believed that no Deathworlder could withstand the overwhelming mental pressure that their psionics could unleash. As the human entered the chamber, the walls shimmered with strange energy and voices echoed, twisting reality into a nightmare. Images of fear and loss, failure and despair bombarded his mind, trying to weaken his resolve. The other cadets collapsed or screamed, overwhelmed by their darkest memories made vivid and real. But the human stood firm. His mind was forged in the fires of Earth's harshest worlds, where survival meant battling not only physical dangers, but also crushing loneliness and desperation. He focused on a single thought: survival is strength. The illusions came faster and harder, each more terrifying than the last. He saw his family in danger, his home burning, his friends lost one by one. The pain was almost unbearable, but he refused to break. Instead, he reached deep inside, calling on memories of triumph, moments when he had fought through impossible odds and emerged victorious. The psychic storm raged, but he was a rock in the flood, unmoving and unyielding. The instructors grew, more unsettled. Sergeant Krall clenched his fists as the human cadet ignored their attacks. "No one should be able to withstand this," he growled. But the human's calm was not weakness. It was a shield built from hard experience. When the trial shifted, plunging him into a vision of endless darkness and isolation, he did not panic. Instead, he walked forward through the void, knowing that fear was only a shadow to be faced and overcome. The trial ended not with a scream, but with silence. The chamber's energy faded, and the human emerged, eyes clear and steady, his mind stronger than ever. The other cadets stared, some in awe, some in fear. He had done what no one believed possible. The Psi Resistance trial had failed to break him. But the true test was yet to come. Word spread quickly through Fort Varn that a massive battle simulation would be next. A full-scale war exercise against a fleet of simulated enemies, designed to crush even the best strategists. The human's reputation had grown so much that some cadets begged to join his squad, hoping to learn from him or simply survive by his side. The instructors reluctantly allowed it, watching carefully as the human prepared his team for what many called a suicide mission. The simulated battlefield was vast, stretching across several kilometers of rocky terrain under a dark sky filled with storm clouds. Enemy ships and ground forces launched wave after wave of attacks, each more intense than the last. Explosions lit the horizon, and the air buzzed with energy weapons fire. The humans' team moved like a well-oiled machine, anticipating enemy moves and adapting instantly. When a squad member was wounded, he didn't hesitate to risk his life to pull them from harm's way. The alien cadets began to understand something profound. This was not just physical strength or sharp mind. It was heart, courage, and unbreakable loyalty that made the human different. During one fierce space skirmish simulation, the human piloted a small fighter craft with unmatched skill, dodging missiles and retaliating with pinpoint accuracy. The instructors watched in stunned silence as he outmaneuvered veteran pilots twice his experience. His actions inspired his squad, turning despair into hope. But the climax of the exercise was a desperate last stand against overwhelming forces. The human and his squad were cornered, outnumbered, and running low on supplies. Instead of surrendering, he rallied his team with a fierce speech about the strength of humanity and the power of never giving up. They fought with everything they had, using every trick and tactic they'd learned, turning the tide just long enough for reinforcements to arrive. When the simulation ended, the fort erupted in quiet respect. The human cadet hadn't just survived the Psi resistance trial or the war exercise, he had dominated them. His name was no longer just a curiosity. It was a symbol of what humanity could achieve. Yet even as victory settled over him, the human knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was watching, and real wars were coming. But he was ready to meet them head-on, stronger in mind, body, and spirit than ever before. The panic of the alien drill sergeants was not about to fade. It was only growing, because they realized the Deathworlder wasn't just surviving their brutal course. He was rewriting the rules of war. The news of the human cadet's unstoppable rise spread quickly beyond Fort Verne, reaching the ears of powerful leaders and generals across the galaxy. Many doubted that a single Deathworlder could change the balance of power, but whispers of his feats sparked both fear and curiosity. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, the next and final challenge loomed large. A real combat simulation designed to test everything the cadets had learned: strength, strategy, mind, and heart, against a full alien battalion in a controlled, high-risk environment. The alien instructors prepared with cold precision, determined to end the human streak of victories and prove once and for all that he was no match for their finest warriors and technology. When the simulation began, the human found himself facing enemies that were faster, smarter, and better equipped than any he had encountered before. The battlefield was a chaotic storm of laser fire, explosions, and screams, stretching across rough terrain littered with ruined buildings and scorched earth. His squad was tasked with capturing a key strategic point while defending their rear lines against relentless assaults. As the fight raged, the human's leadership skills shone brighter than ever. He moved calmly among his team, issuing clear orders and adjusting plans on the fly. When a massive alien warbeast charged their position, he quickly organized a trap, using the environment to funnel the creature into a narrow canyon, where heavy weapons could strike with devastating effect. The beast fell and the squad cheered, their confidence soaring. But the battle was far from over. Enemy reinforcements poured in, and the squad was pushed to the brink. Several cadets fell, wounded or exhausted, yet the human refused to yield. His voice carried strength and hope, inspiring his squad to keep fighting even when the odds seemed hopeless. At one point, the enemy managed to flank their position, forcing the squad into a desperate retreat. The human stayed behind to cover their withdrawal, wielding a heavy plasma cannon with skill and ferocity. He tore through enemy lines, buying time for his team to regroup and heal. The alien drill sergeants watched in disbelief as the human survived impossible situations that should have broken anyone else. But beyond physical prowess, what truly amazed them was his ability to turn even defeat into a chance for victory. When his squad was cornered inside a collapsed building, trapped by fire and enemy soldiers, the human remained calm. He scanned the rubble, found weak points, and led his team in a daring escape through a tunnel no one else had noticed. His quick thinking saved lives and shattered the enemy's expectations. The battle reached its peak when the human confronted the alien battalion's commander, a massive armored alien general known for ruthlessness and brutal tactics. The two clashed in a fierce duel, hand-to-hand combat amid the chaos of war. The general wielded deadly weapons and moved with practiced skill, but the human's resilience and fighting spirit were unmatched. Blow after blow, the duel pushed both warriors to their limits. In the end, it was the human's refusal to quit, his will to protect his team and complete the mission, that gave him the edge. With a final powerful strike, he defeated the general, turning the tide of the battle. As the alien forces began to retreat, the human's squad secured the strategic point, completing the mission against all odds. Exhausted but victorious, the cadets gathered around their leader who stood tall despite his wounds. The alien instructors were silent, their expressions a mix of shock, respect, and fear. They had seen the impossible, a Deathworlder cadet conquer their most brutal test and lead his squad to victory. This moment marked a turning point not just for the training program, but for the galaxy itself. The human's success sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer to be underestimated. His strength, courage, and leadership had rewritten what was possible. Later, as he looked out over the battlefield, the human understood that this victory was just the beginning. Real wars with real enemies awaited, and the fate of many worlds would soon rest on his shoulders. But for now, he had proven that no matter how harsh the challenge, the Deathworlder could face it head-on and win. The alien drill sergeants, once so confident in their superiority, were now forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. Fear had turned into something more profound, respect mixed with dread. Because they knew that with this human cadet, the galaxy had seen the rise of a force unlike any before, one that would shape the future of war and peace for generations to come. The final challenge had been completed, but the true test was about to begin. Word of the human cadet's unprecedented victories spread through the galaxy like wildfire, unsettling the ruling alien factions who had long believed themselves untouchable. Commanders and strategists whispered nervously in their halls, fearful of what a single human, hardened by a Deathworld's relentless trials, might mean for their empires. The human, now no longer just a cadet but a symbol of humanity's fierce spirit, was summoned to join a coalition fleet preparing to confront a rising threat. The brutal Zarvax Dominion, an aggressive alien empire bent on conquering and enslaving every star system in their path. As the fleet assembled in the cold void of space, the human felt the weight of countless lives resting on his shoulders. He was given command of a strike group, smaller than most, but packed with elite pilots and warriors, tasked with disrupting the Zarvax's advance and buying time for the coalition to prepare a full defense. The battle began with a sudden and ferocious attack by Zarvax dreadnoughts, ships so massive and heavily armed that entire fleets trembled at their approach. The human squadron dived into the fray, weaving through missile barrages and laser storms. His ship danced with deadly precision, outmaneuvering enemies and striking critical points with expert timing. Every move was a blend of raw instinct and hard-earned skill. The clash was brutal and chaotic. Explosions rocked the void, starships disintegrated in blazing fireballs, and the cries of warriors echoed through comms. Despite overwhelming odds, the human kept his squad focused, rallying them with calm commands and unwavering determination. When one of his wingmen was struck down, he didn't hesitate to risk his own ship to rescue the pilot, reminding everyone why they fought, not just for victory, but for each other. The Zarvax were ruthless, employing advanced tactics and overwhelming numbers. Yet the human squad exploited every weakness they found, using hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and cunning maneuvers that confused even the most seasoned Zarvax commanders. The battle reached its peak when the human spotted the Zarvax flagship, a towering dreadnought bristling with weapons and shielded by cutting-edge technology. He led a daring assault, slipping past the defensive screens to strike at the ship's heart. The fight was fierce and personal, with enemy fighters swarming his craft and the dreadnought's weapons firing relentlessly. In the midst of the chaos, the human's ship was hit, alarms blaring and systems failing, but he pressed on, driven by a relentless will to survive and win. With a final powerful blast, he disabled the dreadnought's core reactors, sending the massive ship spiraling into destruction. The victory was hard-won, and the cost was high, but the battle shattered the Zarvak's momentum and gave the Coalition precious time to regroup. After the battle, the human squadron was hailed as heroes, their courage and skill inspiring fleets across the galaxy. Yet, the human knew this was only the beginning of a much larger war. He stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out into the stars, thinking about the harsh worlds that had made him strong, the comrades who had fought beside him, and the future that awaited all of humanity. He understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The fear and panic once held by the alien drill sergeants had transformed into a grudging respect and wary alliance. Humans were no longer seen as weak or primitive, but as fierce warriors who could change the course of history. The human cadet had become a legend, a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a species born from struggle and fire. As the fleet prepared for the battles yet to come, the human felt ready. No matter the darkness ahead, he would face it head on. Because in his heart, he carried the strength of every death world he had survived and the hope of all those who looked to him for victory. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was ready to show what it truly meant to fight.